SACP's 15th National Congress. Let's take it there live. You are watching the 15th National Congress of the SA Communist Party that's currently underway. Outgoing General Secretary Blade Nzimande is expected to deliver his political report any moment now. You saw him on the stage. He went away. We assuming he's going to come back. He's going to deliver his political report detailing the events of his time as a leader of this party over 2 decades and how the SACP has fared during his time. At the helm, Samkela Maseko is covering this story for us. He brought us some very interesting interviews in the morning with regards to this, and by all indications, the outgoing General Secretary, Dr. Blade Nzimande, is about to start deliver his political report. Let's listen in.
Comrades, let me allow you to take your seats. Comrades, just before the General Secretary takes the podium, the report. Comrade, order. Bambe, comrades. Comrade, what is going to happen? The General Secretary will present this report, and immediately after the presentation, the copies will be ready for each delegate so that we are able to have it. And then the provincial leaders must come and collect those copies. We will be trying also to ensure that the Central Committee members might be having it as it is presented, but they are still busy with that. At this stage, let me give it to Unopala. Comrade John Malule, uhleli endaweni wrong. Nansi sithi khuphuka.
Amandla. Viva the South African Communist Party, viva. Viva SACP, 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 viva! Viva the African National Congress, viva! Viva COSATU, viva! Viva the YCL Ufasimba, viva! Forward to socialism, forward! Phansi ngecapitalism, phansi! Phansi ngokudelezwa, phansi! Phansi ngokuhlukumeza omama, phansi! Phansi ngeshimane, phansi! Amandla! Amandla! Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy National Chairperson, Comrade Tulas. Allow me, comrades, to start by greeting our National Chairperson, Comrade Senzeni Zogwan, who was commenting very nicely that he likes very much the colors on the roof of this hall where we are meeting. And I definitely agreed with him that those colors mixed with the red of the SACP, it looks good. Now, let me also, comrades, greet the national office bearers of our party, Comrade Tulas, our first Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Soli, our National Treasurer, Comrade Joyce Mloe Mropa, and all the members of the Central Committee who are seated in front here, including those members of the Central Committee who have decided to defy and sit down there. Let me also greet our glorious movement, the African National Congress, led by Comrade Gwede Mantashe, the national chairperson of the ANC, and the delegation of the ANC that is here. Let me also greet Comrade Zingiswa Losi, the president of our federation. Comrade Losi, COSATU is our federation, proudly so as communists. The General Secretary, Comrade Nzimande, and the other office bearers and the members of the delegation of COSATU are here. Comrade Kontini, the National Secretary of the YCL, and our delegation of the YCL here, Ufasimba. Let me also greet Meti Mpoani, our mother, very special mother of ours, and all the party stalwarts who are here with us today. Let me also greet not our international guests. We are not guests at this Congress. You are part of us, our international participants at this Congress. And also all our national domestic guests who have joined us from various formations that we are working with, including business representatives who also are able to assist us as the party now and again. You are all welcome. Let's also greet members of the diplomatic corps who are here, ambassadors and high commissioners who have joined us at this Congress. You are all welcome. But most importantly, comrades, allow me to greet all of you delegates to this 15th National Congress of the South African Communist Party. Comrades, let me start by making a plea. I like the energy that I'm seeing from you, debating and engaging. But can I request that now, with that energy, take it, let's transition now, and not focus it on discussing administrative matters. Let's use it now to transition to discuss the class politics of the revolution. I guess politics, my comrades. And that's where I want to suggest, let's take this energy to face the challenges facing our own revolution. As we complete this centenary year of the SACP, our tasks and responsibilities are greater than ever. We are now nearly 3 decades beyond the decisive democratic breakthrough of 1994. It was a breakthrough that marked the formal end of decades of white minority rule, built on 3 centuries of colonialism. The party, along with our allies, was in the forefront of that decisive 1994 democratic breakthrough. But after nearly 3 decades, comrades, life for the working class and for the broader majority of South Africans is in crisis. And the burden of this crisis hits women, and working class women in particular, hardest. It is no secret that the momentum of our national democratic struggle has stalled on many fronts. In some respects, the NDR is in reverse. It is no secret that our leading alliance partner, the ANC, by its own admission, is facing major internal challenges. A divided progressive trade union movement in a sea of mass unemployment is generally weaker now, if we face the truth, than 30 years ago. Proletarian communities, mainly in our urban townships and informal settlements, as well as in former Bantustans, are torn apart by the daily struggles for survival. Hence, I'm saying let's take our energy to the real issues facing the revolution. The current socio-economic crisis is deeply felt by the condition of the youth in our society, especially the exceedingly high levels of youth unemployment. One particular manifestation of the crisis facing young people is that nearly 4 million young people between the ages of 15 and 24 years are neither in education, employment, or training. This segment of young people is largely made up of youth from black working class and poor families. The crisis facing young people best illustrates the extent to which our national democratic revolution is encumbered by the very same contradictions it seeks to address. And one of those contradictions is the challenge facing young people in our country. It is also perhaps apt to put up front the reason for the impact of what we refer to as the multiple crises of capitalism hitting working class women hardest. This conceptual understanding must be brought to bear in our analysis and strategies to build a socialist society that does not discriminate and embed inequality between people, including based on race and gender. For instance, capitalism abdicates responsibility beyond the lowest wage capital can negotiate for the living conditions of the workers and the poor. You know, when capitalists are doing well, accumulating, all is okay, and the economy is doing well, and they often claim because of them. What they forget is that in that process of accumulation, they are deepening poverty and inequality for the overwhelming majority of the people. When that poverty and inequality hits crisis levels, they are the first ones to say, where is the government? Why is the government not addressing these problems? Yet when they eat alone, but when there are problems, they expect our own government to bail them out like they are doing now. This responsibility of poverty, inequality, and unemployment is shifted largely to women. In the household, comrades, it is women who carry a disproportionate burden of housework. Women are said to work a double day. Those who are working, they go to work or in the informal economy, and then come home and start again with cooking, cleaning, homework, bathing children, looking after the elderly, looking after the sick members of the family, and often tending to the needs of the men in the household as well. In fact, comrades, if truth be told, most of South Africa's households today are functional despite the enormity of the challenges that they are facing because of the role of women in those households. That's a fact that we have to accept. That is why we can't then be a society we wish to be if we were actually meting out violence, including femicide, against women in our country. We are actually destroying the future of our country. And comrades, it's a fact that the less the state provides public goods that are essential for a working class family's livelihood, the more it is the unpaid care work of women that carries the family. It is this unpaid labor that is not counted in the National Statement of Accounts, or when we talk about the gross domestic product. We don't count the labor of women. This double day for women is often ideologically justified through patriarchy and gender stereotypes that define women as carers, as cooks, and in some cultures prevent women from being involved in particular activities, particularly when they're in their biological reproductive cycle or menstruating. To truly shift the burden off women, society must do at least 4 things. Ensure that women's reproductive life cycle is accepted and supported in a manner that enables them to participate fully in society. It's a very strange thing that the fact that women carry human beings for 9 months in their stomachs makes them to be regarded as lesser human beings. Ordinarily, they should be regarded as more than just human beings because they are able to carry this human life for 9 months and ensure that they bring that human life to fruition after 9 months. But ideologically, that gets presented as a frailty and as a weakness that often leads to discrimination against women. So we have to accept this. Secondly, we need to eradicate gender inequality within the family. Ensure that also, thirdly, women are safe in the home, in the community, and in the workplace. And fourthly, ensure that women have access to and resources for full participation in the economy, in politics, and in social life. To ensure that women who are delegates to the 15th Congress of the SACP are made to be able to participate effectively, no less than male delegates. By ensuring that whatever specific needs they have, they need to be catered for. In all this, comrades, the truth is, black working class and poor women are the most affected because of the legacy of triple oppression that comprises racial oppression, class super-exploitation, and patriarchal domination. As a vanguard party, we must bring this understanding to bear throughout our structures, in our workplaces, in our relationship with our allies, and in all campaigns and struggles that we are involved in. The struggle for socialism is simultaneously a struggle against women's oppression. Now, let us return to the main question, comrades. Why is the life for the working class, including women, including its youth, why is that life for the broader majority of South Africans in crisis? And much more importantly, what is to be done? That is the task before this Congress, comrades. I would like to emphasize that. Let's not use our energies in a misplaced way. Our energies must be about what is to be done about these challenges we are outlining in this report. There are calls at the moment for a social compact between so-called social partners, government, business, the labor movement, and civil society. We also have Mr. Nedlek here in his deployment right next to me. As the SACP, we are not opposed in principle to engagements of this kind. We want to make this clear. And in fact, we support it. But those proposing it must seriously analyze the structural problems that we need to address. In particular, we need to do a serious class analysis of what has occurred in South Africa over the past 3 decades. The sober reality is that the class balance of forces that made possible the radical political and constitutional breakthrough of the mid-1990s has changed. It has changed unfavorably for the broader working class and poor. Any social compact under these conditions will be seriously weighted against the working class and poor, against the working class youth and working class women in particular, in the context of the legacy of colonialism of a special time. It will be a compact in which the prevailing and suffocating neoliberal macroeconomic framework will be off limits, non-negotiable. A social compact under these conditions will simply be about some redistributive trade-offs that will not address the deep underlying political economic crisis. That is why, for any such compact to succeed, it must be based on concrete analysis of concrete conditions. We are not against the social compact, Tishomkhulu, in your deployment as Minister of Employment and Labor. But we are saying let's be Marxist in our approach to it. What are the conditions that we are facing now? In a way, our constitution can be regarded as having been some kind of a social compact in 1996. But it was a social compact based on a different balance of forces than we are at right now. And this is why then in this political report, we are proposing as our line of march for the next 5 years and beyond that the party must play a key role in building a powerful socialist movement of the working class and poor. All the other key organizational comrades, all the other key organizational, electoral, and socio-economic objectives we have consistently raised over the past are dependent for their realization on building a powerful socialist movement of the working class and the poor. Whether it is in addressing the multiple system crisis of inequality, unemployment, poverty, the rising cost of living, whether it is reversing the growing popular disillusion with electoral politics that we are seeing in our country, whether it is ensuring a just green transition or industrialization, whether it is achieving real renewal of an ANC in a downward spiral or reconfiguration of our alliance, all of these objectives will remain out of reach unless we fundamentally change the balance of class forces much more effectively in favor of the great majority of South Africans, the workers and poor. That also includes, comrades, what we are singing about. There is no state power if you don't have power on the ground. That is the reality. There is no state power if you can't shift on the ground the balance of forces in favor of the workers and the poor. You can dream about it, but it won't happen if objectively the conditions have not been changed. And we are saying the primary form through which we should change this is to build this powerful socialist movement of the workers and the poor. It's not for the workers and the poor. Because if we are saying it's a socialist movement for the workers and the poor, we are assuming that we're going to build it somewhere else and then bring it to the workers and the poor. It must be a socialist movement built by workers themselves in this country. So the fundamental challenge facing the revolution at this point in time is to wage a struggle to tilt the balance of forces in favor of the workers and the poor. How do we do that? That's the task of this Congress, Maqabane. That's what we should be debating and be prioritizing and be seeking to spend every minute of this Congress debating and coming out with the way forward on this particular matter. Let us begin, for instance, with what we all know. According to the World Bank, South Africa is the most unequal society on earth. We have the highest levels of income inequality. Our wealth inequality is even greater. We have what must rank as the world's worst crisis levels of unemployment, at an unsustainable level now approaching 50% in the broader and more accurate definition. Youth unemployment is at around an incredible 70%. Unemployment of women of all working ages, with black women being the most affected, is 6.5% higher than that of men. Given that the racial and gender dimensions of unemployment continue to be rooted in the stubborn and persisting legacy of colonialism of a special type, it is pretty obvious that young black women are the majority of the unemployed. Consequently, mass poverty and related challenges like food insecurity, vulnerability of the poor to weather-related disasters, like we have seen recently in KZN and Eastern Cape, including things like TB, COVID-19, diabetes, and many other chronic diseases. Our people are vulnerable to that because of some of these challenges. The resulting loss of social cohesion is apparent in the fact that we are also amongst the most violent societies in the world, perhaps with the exception of only those who are in the midst of military conflict. Comrades, this Communist Party can't be dilly-dallying at this Congress and focusing on things that are not a priority. Last year alone, it's estimated, Comrade Chair, that just under 400 girls between the ages of 10 and 14 gave birth to children. Ingane na 10 thola umntwana. What is that reflecting? Teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17 in East London, they die being in a shibini. That's one of the most serious expressions of this multiple crisis of social reproduction that we are talking about. And we are facing the reality of a society that is in decay. Let's face that as communists and not dilly-dally about it. The fact that more than half of gender-based violence does not happen in the streets in the darkness. It actually happens where women are staying and where they are supposed to be safe. That is where they get raped, that is where they get assaulted, that is where they get killed. In my deployment, students rightly fight with me and say, we need student accommodation that is safe. That's true, they are right. But we need to do more than that if we are to deal with gender-based violence, because it's in some of these most beautiful student accommodation that women students are chopped into pieces, like it happened with the young lady from East London at Fort Hare. These are facts. It's not statistics. These, they affect real, living human beings in our society. They testify to the daily reality of working class households and communities, to children going to bed hungry and losing their childhood, to unemployed youth with their dreams shattered, to women suffering from the most awful gender-based violence, to LGBTQI+ people being abused, to retrenched workers on street corners holding up placards that say plumber, welder or plasterer, hoping to be picked up by a bakkie for at least one day's work this week, to human traffickers preying on the most desperate and the most vulnerable. Surely this Congress can't be preoccupied with non-issues when our country and the revolution is faced with these realities. It can't be. That would be irresponsible, and it would not be the Communist Party that the working class expects in this country. We can't be showing ourselves on television debating non-issues, actually, instead of saying we have come here to spend time to address this. And what does this require? It requires that we unite ourselves. A Congress is not a place for grandstanding. A Congress of a Communist Party is a place to address these realities that we are coming from and we are returning back to when we go to our places of abode or in our workplaces. Now, these are daily South African realities. In differing degrees, you will find them throughout the global South. But what makes South Africa as a global outlier, outcast almost, is the degree to which poverty and unemployment occur amid extreme inequality and significant wealth. All these things that we're outlining here, they are sitting side by side with people who are filthy rich in this country. Because South Africa is a global outlier in other respects as well. For instance, the value of speculative capital on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, or it's called the Securities Exchange now, is around 3 times more than our GDP. Stock exchange, by the way, is like a casino, is a place for capital to gamble. So there is more money for gambling by capitalists than our gross domestic product. To gamble with our lives and the lives of the working class. That's what capitalism is. And even more so today, as this political report will show just now. We are like a dog with a tail that is triple the size of the rest of its body. The rand is amongst the most traded emerging market currencies. We are said to have amongst the most sophisticated of financial sectors. Are these different sets of realities unconnected? On the one hand, the social calamity that I've been talking about, and on the other hand, the hyper-financialization on the other. Are inequality, poverty, unemployment, and endemic social violence, as we are told, merely a legacy of a hangover from decades of apartheid, worsened by state capture, or what Marx in Capital Volume 1 called the fraudulent alienation of the state, and supposedly unpredictable? Are South Africa's hyper-financialization characteristics essentially a positive reality, as we are constantly being told? We have a good, nice, large financial sector. We regard that. We are told it's a big positive for our economy. The terrible legacy of colonial and apartheid past and endemic corruption are major factors, comrades. We are not underestimating them. But it is the hegemony of the financial oligarchy and its related neoliberal policies and its capture of some of our public institutions, including the Reserve Bank, Treasury, and the Public Investment Corporation, and its deep influence upon government and wider society that have become the major drivers of the deepening socio-economic crisis confronting the majority of South Africans. That's the thesis from this political report. That what we are actually now dealing with is as a result of this financial oligarchy that is actually at the heart and controlling our economy. We'll spend a bit of time in explaining this in this political report. It is for this reason that in this political report, as we review the strategy and tactics and the tasks of the SACP in the coming 5 years, it is necessary that we begin right here. We need to reflect much more deeply on the nature of the neoliberal hyper-financialization of our economy and its socio-economic impact that has been underway very rapidly since 1994. To put it bluntly, over the past quarter century, there has been an aggressive neoliberal assault driven by the financial oligopoly on our new democracy. Our democracy is being assaulted by this financial oligarchy. There are many examples, by the way, comrades. You see adverts on television. It appears it's an advert, I won't mention the name of a company, that is selling you means that when you are sick, you go to hospital. And then it adds very quickly. For each day you are in hospital, you're going to get so much money. That's financialization of health. That advert is not selling health, it's selling money. It's actually selling debt. That's just one simple, clear example of the extent of the financialization of our lives and the financialization of our economy. The stranglehold that the monopoly financial sector now has over our political economy undermines our ability to effectively advance key developmental programs like reindustrialization, major infrastructure build programs that we need, universal basic income grant or a national health insurance, or funding of students in higher education, for instance. All these things we agreed we must do, but the single biggest enemy is the financial oligarchy that actually is holding. Now here you are, Tishomkul, Comrade Tulas, deployed as a minister. When you go to NETLAC to negotiate, you have got representatives from employers. Who are they actually? It's the financial sector. It's even positioning itself as representing the interests of employers in totality, when they are actually representing a section, but a very powerful section, that controls our economy. Marxist analysis of the earlier apartheid era political economy correctly identified, Comrade Gwede, the mineral energy complex as the dominant capitalist sector in South Africa. This dominance was reflected in a number of other core features. An economy whose primary mode of existence was the digging of mineral resources and sending them to the ports out of the country unprocessed, and then importing all finished goods that we actually need from outside the country. That was at the heart of what we call the minerals industrial complex. It's the mineral energy complex. But also the other features of this was that by doing that, we remained a peripheral society in the global scale of things. With being a low-waged, unskilled labor, initially as migrants from labor reserves in South and Southern Africa. In other words, the minerals energy complex characterized characterized a typical colonial economy with particularly patriarchal features, with women largely excluded from the productive economy and peripheralized often into the labor reserves. And they are still there, many of them. Much as there is movement to urban areas, but many women are still locked in the former Bantustans. And the former Bantustans represents some of the poorest areas in our country, where there is hardly any economic activity. A major feature of this mineral energy complex was its very high levels of monopoly concentration. In fact, a single conglomerate, Anglo-American, rooted in mining, dominated some 80% of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in the early 1990s. One company, it was Anglo-American, which was 80% in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. In its social composition and logic of capital accumulation, the mineral energy complex is deeply patriarchal. These problematic structural features, comrades, still remain embedded in our political economy. Our economy remains highly concentrated. The way in which the mineral energy complex has skewed the inbuilt trajectory of our society remains in place. But now, since our democratic breakthrough, there have been significant changes that we have to understand. If we are to understand what has happened to the world of work, what has happened to our communities, and what has happened to the post-apartheid state. Unless we do so, we will not be able to effectively position the party strategically. While mining remains an important sector, particularly for foreign currency export earnings, and as a major but declining source of jobs, its relative size within South Africa's overall GDP has diminished to just 8% from 21% in 1980. I'm not saying, Comrade Gwede, that mining is a sunset industry, but it has diminished over the period as also the financial sector grows. From around the mid-1990s, coinciding with the democratic breakthrough and in line with global capitalist trends, the financial sector has grown. You know, in 1994, comrades, Kumalo ngiyakubona lapho, Comrade Casrills. In 1994, the financial sector in South Africa constituted 6.5% of the GDP. Today, it is 25% of our economy. And industrialization has been the opposite direction, declining, and we're an economy that is experiencing deindustrialization. And these developments have transformed many of the dominant features of the capitalist class. Class representatives, black and white, by the way, of the financial services sector, notably the banking oligopoly, but also the major asset management and insurance corporates, are now clearly the hegemonic force within the capitalist class. Monopoly finance capital, as I have said, now presents its interest as if it is the interest of business as a whole. This financial sector class dominance is reinforced by the increasing financialization of other sectors of the economy, like mining and retail. The penetration of financialization into other sectors includes the major shift in corporate practice to enhancing shareholder values above all else, and giving millions of rands to CEOs and CFOs as rewards, grotesque rewards, not for productive outcomes, but to make more money in the short term for the shareholders. That's why CEO wasesibanye can earn several 100 million rands per annum but they are resisting to pay mine workers give an increase of 1,000 rand a month. Because that is now the direction that is actually becoming even worse. This dominance of the monopoly finance sector has also been characterized, this is one feature of our state, by the way, of a revolving door. And we want to raise this because we are concerned about it as the SACP, between National Treasury, the Reserve Bank, and the private banking sector. If you look at our comrades deployed there now, and others, you can see, if you leave National Treasury, you are likely to go to work for a bank. If you leave a bank and join government, you are likely to go to the Reserve Bank. This is an unhealthy relationship that is actually causing the throttling of our economy by monopoly finance capital at the direct expense of building a productive economy that would create jobs.
All right, let's come out of that SACP briefing. We'll give you an update on what happened there.